Hi, everybody. It's Dan Cirucci, and we are live with New Jersey State Senator Mike Testa. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great. I mean, we're still in the budget season. We're getting ready to finish that up and hopefully take a break in the legislature for a little while in the summertime, July and August, and we'll be back in September. And I'm sure a pretty crazy lame duck session between September and December.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the budget situation because I know that we are in budget season and you're on the budget committee, and that's been something you've been intimately involved in. Did you get on the budget committee when you were first elected, or how long have you been on there?
Yes, that was my first committee that I ever had, was the Senate Budget and Appropriations Committee. So they sort of threw me into the deep end of the pool for sure to see if I could swim.
And I think you did very well. I think you were ready. I think you were ready for it.
Thank you for that. I mean, it's what's amazing to me is when you think of the gravity of the state budget, when Governor Christie left office, and I know with Republicans, many Republicans, he's no longer their favorite son for sure, and possibly justified in many cases. But
for the record, I still love him, but go ahead.
Look, I still consider him a friend, but I don't agree with how he's attacked other Republicans. I'm an 11th Commandment Republican, and I believe that we should be better than the other side. And we certainly are outnumbered in the state of New Jersey by Democrats, and we shouldn't be engaging and fighting and giving the Democrats more fodder to use against us. But his last budget was $34 billion. This year's budget is proposed to be $58+ billion. That's $24 billion more than it was 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. We've been on a very unsustainable path for the state of New Jersey. And I keep hearing from Phil Murphy, the governor, that New Jerseyans are supposed to feel stronger and fairer. And everyone I speak to seems to think that we are weaker and poorer.
Absolutely. And I really do think, there's been an enormous amount of government growth, bloated government spending under this administration. Of course, they've had the governorship, they've had both the Senate and the House, the entire state legislature, and they really haven't paid much attention to the so-called loyal opposition. Okay, and I think the state was run much better under Governor Christie. And
to that, I don't think we can have any argument. I don't know that anybody could have a legitimate argument that Governor Murphy is doing a better job than Governor Christie did.
Look, I also think that Governor Christie was closer to the people. He was more in touch with the people. Of course, he was a native New Jerseyan, which
that helps.
Murphy is not. Murphy is from Massachusetts, and Governor Christie was about as New Jersey as you could be. Okay, I mean, Jersey, as we say, Jersey was in his DNA
for sure.
No question about it. And by the way, I understand that the Republican candidate, Mikey Sherrill, I'm still wondering, by the way, folks, I'm still
the Democrat candidate. I don't mean to correct you, Dan, but you said the Republican candidate. You mean the Democrat candidate.
The Democrat candidate. I'm sorry. Oh, my God, please. The Democrat candidate, Mikey Sherrill. By the way, folks, I'm still wondering why she calls herself Mikey. I mean, we have to. First of all, what is her actual name?
Okay. Rebecca. Rebecca is her first name.
Rebecca?
Yes.
Well, how'd she get the name Mikey?
So her middle name, I believe, is Michelle, and that's where they come up with Mikey. I don't know. That's kind of odd to me.
Yes, but most Michelles that I know or have known through my life, Senator, have been known as Mickey.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Mikey. Oh, by the way, would you like to be called Mikey?
So there are some folks around the city of Vineland that call me Mikey, and they've known me for a very, very long time. And I take that as a term of endearment. I typically prefer Michael, actually, although everybody just shortens it to Mike. But if someone calls me Mikey, it means they've probably known me since I was, running around in my underoos or something like that, Yeah.
Does your mom call you Mikey?
Sometimes, sometimes my mom calls me Mikey. I would say there's some of my like long-term buddies that have, like when I say have known me since I was 3 or 4 years old that, I liked being called Mikey when I was growing up. So, but, usually it's usually three names I get called: Mikey, Testa, or Michael. The Mike isn't amongst my close friends. They've never really called me Mike. My father was Mike, so I was usually Mikey or Michael. Yeah.
Okay, now your mom, and I've met your parents. Right? They're just wonderful, wonderful people. They're soul of the earth people.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Your mom, if she's like really serious or she wants to like reprimand you or something, does she call you Michael?
I'm not so sure I can repeat what she calls me when she's really upset with me and wants to reprimand me. Listen, I love my mom. She's one of her, look, one of the main reasons I came back to Cumberland County was to be with my grandparents. My grandfather was still practicing law when I graduated law school.
Right.
Unfortunately, he passed away in August of that year that I graduated law school in 2001. But I wanted to be with my grandparents and my mom and dad. I'm an old school family guy, and I wanted to be with my family and practice law right here in Cumberland County. So I did.
It's just a wonderful story. And of course, your dad, you, and I all happen to be graduates of Villanova University.
That is correct. Yeah.
Some of our people that are watching might have heard of Villanova, particularly in recent weeks. Where were you and how did you react when you heard that the new Pope, Pope Leo XIV, is not only American, but was a graduate, was an Augustinian, which we were taught by the Augustinians.
Sure.
And a graduate of Villanova. Where were you and how did you react?
So I actually was in a mid-conversation with Senator Paul Sarlo, and I got a couple text messages alerting me to what had happened. And I said, "Oh my gosh."
Trenton at the time?
I was in Trenton. Yeah, we were in budget committee, and we were in the back room grabbing a quick lunch in between sessions. And I got a couple text messages, and I checked my phone and said, "Oh my gosh, we have a new pope." And my friend sent me the article. So I clicked on it and I found out that Pope Leo XIV was obviously not only American, but had graduated Villanova. So I know exactly where I was, and we were all sort of chatting in the back. Those of us who were on the Senate Budget and Appropriations Committee. So I was shocked. I did not have that on my bingo card, as the younger kids like to say. I did not have that as American Pope. But someone did ask me, and I'd love to ask you this question. Someone asked me, they said, "Would you prefer to have Jay Wright back and winning 3 more national titles, or would you rather have the Pope?" And I got to tell you, I'm not really sure which one I'd rather have, So.
Well, I think I would probably go with the Pope, only because I'm deeply concerned, and I think you probably are too, about the future of the Catholic Church. I'm deeply, deeply concerned, and I feel very, very strongly that we need religious institutions in our society now more than ever. They sort of serve as guardrails for us, to sort of help us determine, how to live a good and proper life. And unless we have a functioning, observant Catholic Church, which is one of the biggest religions in the world, we're in trouble.
Oh, I think we're in deep trouble. And under the last Pope, I can tell you, I was not a fan whatsoever of
Right.
the last Pope. I thought
Right.
he was a socialist. I didn't like how the last Pope sort of was delving into American politics. I think that the Catholic Church has a lot of their own house cleaning to do. I think you know what I'm referring to.
Oh, absolutely.
And, but look, you and I went to Villanova. I love the seal of the great University of Villanova, where it says Unitas, Veritas, Caritas. I think we have to have more people live by principles such as that and what the Augustinians teach there. But again, if we're going to have a pope, if we're going to have a strong Catholic Church, the folks in leadership there, such as Pope Leo XIV, have to walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Yeah. And I think, you've got to get back to the core teachings of the Catholic Church, the Catechism, the Magisterium, whatever you want to call it. And you have to get it because that's the foundation of the Church.
Absolutely. And I think, look, with the scandals that the Catholic Church has had over the past, I'd go as far as back 30 years, that things have been being revealed on the dark side of the Catholic Church. They've lost a lot of young people. My generation, I can tell you, had distrust there, utter disappointment, disgust. Sure. And I know that there was a big movement with Catholics coming home to the church. That's something that I hope Pope Leo XIV is focusing on. And by all accounts, from what I'm hearing, that is what he's focusing on, amongst other things.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see how his papal leadership turns out.
He seems to be up to a good start. Let's hope it continues. Now, but speaking of like belief and how to live your life and all, I have to say, folks, Senator Mike Testa is very adept with social media, and as far as all across all of the public officials in New Jersey that I know, and I know quite a few of them, he has such an amazing social media presence. And if you reach out to him, it almost doesn't matter how we reach out to him through social media, email, Facebook, X, whatever. He or somebody, when his staff, will get back to you. It's just amazing. It's amazing. And you, Senator, have every day, you have a little bit of advice or a quote or a saying or a thought for the day on your Facebook page. How did you come up with that?
So it was pretty interesting. I mean, they're as much for me as they are for anybody else. I like to make espresso in the morning, so I do a story with that every day. And then the cafe latte I make for my wife. I don't drink cafe lattes, but I make those for my wife, and it's kind of a therapeutic to make it. And it became, usually a song that I had heard, because I have a song of the day and a quote of the day that I go into the post. And it's usually a motivational quote for myself, or sometimes if you can tell what kind of mood I'm in, if it's a Machiavellian quote or I'm quoting Sun Tzu. And you could also sometimes garner what kind of mood I'm in by which songs I'm listening to, what comes up in my Spotify playlist. So it just, I don't really know how I came up with it, but I can tell you why I continued it. I stopped when I first started doing it after probably about, I'd say a couple months. I stopped for about 4 or 5 days. I just didn't do it. I was inundated with messages from friends of mine, and some that are just Facebook friends, not like real life friends that we've hang out in real life, asking me if I was okay. Please continue the quotes, that they meant so much to people. So that's why I've continued it. And look, I'm a quote machine. I love certain philosophers, Marcus Tullius Cicero, Montesquieu, and then obviously some of the great figures in history, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, Ronald Reagan,
Winston Churchill,
Thomas Sowell. So those are individuals that I really, Ludwig von Mises is another one that creeps in there. Milton Friedman, so those are ones that if I'm really upset about the economy, you'll probably see an Uncle Milton Friedman quote in there. So that's sort of how that has turned out. And people seem to really enjoy it.
Folks, I urge you to go to,
that's my personal page.
Just as a personal Facebook page, and you will see these quotes that are posted every day, usually with a cup of espresso there to sort of start your day, something to think about. And they're not your standard, everyday quotes. Sometimes they're a little deeper and very thought-provoking, okay? So it's something to follow. Now, Senator, I wanted to let's talk about politics. I read a quote recently. It actually came from Walter Lippmann, the renowned columnist and author from another era, back to the Cold War era and back to the World War II era.
Okay.
He said, in politics, there is no final chapter. It's just more politics. And I thought it was such a wonderful, speaking of quotes, such a wonderful quote. And in the Republican Party in New Jersey, unfortunately, it seems that both locally, countywide, statewide, more politics seems to mean more fighting, more infighting, more internecine fighting. Okay, more family feuds. Now you have put together a Republican Party in Cumberland County. You flipped the first legislative district. It was very dramatic. It was a huge breakthrough. You energized Cumberland County. You're the chair of the party there. How do you maintain, and you're united there, how do you maintain that unity?
So, I mean, the unity here is maintained, and it's not always perfect. Look, I'd be lying to you if I told you it's perfect. We have a little bit of infighting, like any family disputes. You know, they're common, but we talk it out. That's something that I say. Look, I'd rather call me. I'll be available, just like you said earlier about that. I'm available on social media. I'm also available by phone. If someone wants to sit down and have a cup of coffee with me because they're upset about something that they're hearing or seeing or believing, then we sit down and we hash it out. My thing is this: I try to focus on the main thing, and that's winning elections. And then after you win elections, you have to have good government. So to me, I think many times around the state, when you see a lot of infighting, I think it's caused by people who have either forgotten how to win or never knew how to win. Because I see so many, Republicans who, self-identify as conservatives or patriots, or you name what they self-identify as. I'm not so sure that their end goal is to win elections, which is the only way we're going to be able to create real change in the state of New Jersey. We have to be in the arena. And I think a lot of people, just like we've been warned about so many times by the greats, the quotes that we've referenced earlier, Winston Churchill, if you stop for every dog that barks, you'll never get to where your goal. I think that happens a lot in the Republican Party. We've sort of lost our eye on the prize of winning elections, and they allow that Reagan quote, allowing the perfect to be the enemy of the good. There's times you have a very good candidate that could win, but the people around him or her are upset that they don't agree with them 100% of the time. So they either call that person a rhino or, slap some other tag on them that doesn't help Republicans win elections, which is very perplexing.
Just as an example of some of the really petty fights we've had, I don't know whether this was in Cape May County or Atlantic County. I know my friend, our friend Brian Fitzherbert, was caught up in it. Was a fight over the Young Republicans, and they started a rival Young Republicans group to rival the Young Republicans group that had already been chartered by the state of New Jersey, Young Republicans Federation. I mean,
no comment on that. I have to tell you, just again, it's more infighting that makes no sense. And I think far too many people, you look at President Trump. J.D. Vance was a harsh critic, and I think unjustifiably so, harsh critic of President Donald Trump. Yet what did President Trump do? He brought him into the fold, and now he's the vice president. I mean, Vice President Vance said some awful things about President Trump. And I think far too many people shut the door forever and forget that we're supposed to be teammates in this, and that we're supposed to be the Big Tent party. So, I I have a saying that I'm not going to say on your show because it has a curse word in it. I said sometimes as the county chairman, I have what is known as an excrement sandwich smorgasbord, right? Like, but it's I have to eat some crow and call people in that might not be happy with me and have a sit down and talk with them and say, listen, let's hash this out, because comments on Facebook or rumor mill doesn't help our party win elections. And,
No.
to me, the only way we're ever going to have real change is if when we have a Republican governor and at least a very close legislature. And right now, in both houses in the legislature, we don't have that. So even when you're hearing it from me first, even when we elect Jack Ciattarelli as governor, if we don't have multiple seats gained in the assembly, so that it's, let's come up with a number, 42-38, let's say, which would be monumental if we got to there. I'd be thrilled to death if we have that number in the assembly, even with Republicans being 38. It's going to be really, really hard for Governor Ciattarelli to enact his plan, because you know exactly what is going to happen in the legislature. They are going to put up a blockade for his agenda, which is why guys like myself, obviously Leader Tony Bucco in the Senate, we have Leader DeMaio in the Assembly, have to be able to carry that water for the gubernatorial candidate, obviously when he's governor. But what's going to happen. They're going to run interference the entire time.
Look at this. I mean, we had primary challenges and fights, and it isn't just in counties where Republicans have been losing. It's in counties where Republicans have been consistently winners. We had a primary fight in Monmouth County, okay? When the legislative seats. And I was talking to our friend Jerry Scharfenberger, and he was, fortunately, he and his running mate won, but he said, we had to spend a lot of money to do it, and we don't have any money now. We need that money for November. Okay?
Absolutely.
And there was a stupid, needless fight. You had a legislative fight in Burlington County in the primary. You had a legislative fight, I believe it was in Gloucester. I guess it was in Gloucester and part of Camden County.
Yes, in LD4. Yes, in LD4.
The primary. So you had a fight. Well, I'm in Cherry Hill here now. There's a fight among Republicans in Cherry Hill. The Republicans in Cherry Hill are split. They haven't been in power in, I don't know, more than 40 years. They haven't been in power here in Cherry Hill in more than 40 years. Okay.
And Dan, what you're sort of proving my point from earlier. They forgot how to win, and I think they've even forgotten what the actual goal is. Instead of looking at a certain title, maybe being the chairman of Cherry Hill or being the county chairman, maybe you should focus on getting Republicans elected. Look, some of my folks over the years since I've been the chair since 2014 did not agree with my tactics. I don't ostracize them from the party. I try to convince them that, hey, look, we have a plan. I'm more than willing to listen to your plan, but it better not be the same plan that we've lost with in the past, because that's the very definition of insanity. And I think that's kind of where we're at with a number of these, what I call so-called Republicans, because if they were real Republicans, guess what? They would try to find a way to win. And when you haven't won in 40 years in a town like Cherry Hill, where there are a number of Republicans, I've looked at the map before. Camden County, people think of Camden County as this Democrat machine. Guess what? In the state of New Jersey, I believe it's the 6th highest primary Republican voter county in the state of New Jersey. Right? So guess what?
The number of Republicans, and Jack Ciattarelli has made reference to that many times, and he has campaigned in Camden County repeatedly.
Sure.
Unfortunately, figure this out. The Camden County Republican organization went ahead and endorsed Jack's opponent, even though it was abundantly clear to anyone who knew how to count votes or anyone who knew anything about politics that Jack Ciattarelli was going to be the nominee, right?
Well, you said a mouthful there. Anyone who knew anything about politics, actual real knowledge. There's so many people out there that think they know what they're talking about that absolutely are clueless. And I'm going to reference my good friend Joe Kondo. No one would, try to give advice to a neurosurgeon that isn't a neurosurgeon. You wouldn't say to a neurosurgeon as they're going into brain surgery, you know what you ought to do? You ought to try this. But somehow there's two professions, and I happen to be in both, the law and politics, people who have zero clue, never won a race in their life, have never run for office in their life, have a whole lot to say about how to run races. And it's disturbing.
Yeah.
And also I want to speak about this. There were two counties that went for Bill Spadea as their endorsed candidate that did not have open conventions, Dan.
There you go.
To me, here it is. You had the candidate that I'm not even going to give the dignity of naming him because he did nothing to try to help unify the party.
No.
You had him state that he was not participating in any of the rigged backroom, county organizations where we actually have duly elected county committee people and a paper ballot in Cumberland County. Now, Jack has made investments in Cumberland County, time, sweat, real equity over time since 2020. Okay. Mm-hmm. Since 2020, when he was first starting to really get momentum to run for his first gubernatorial run. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? When you slap all of those people in the face who are duly elected county committee people, what are you going to do if you did win the primary? Come back to them and ask them for their help to be your volunteers for door knocking and lit drops and come to your town halls? They're going to say, wait a minute, you just ignored all of us. But the two counties, by the way, who absolutely, how hypocritical of that candidate, by the way, those two counties, Camden and Ocean, who had complete backroom rigged county conventions or recommendations of their steering committee, whatever they want to call it, that candidate lost miserably even in those counties.
Yes. Jack, of course, carried all 21 counties, and it was a stupendous performance. But of course, you and I knew and saw that Jack Cirucci was campaigning endlessly almost since the last gubernatorial election, and that he remained very, very, very close to the Republican grassroots in every town, city, every little nook and cranny of the state. He knew people at the local level by name, thousands and thousands of people.
Dan, his energy was remarkable. Okay.
I've never seen anybody
was absolutely remarkable. And one of the things I'd like to point out about not only was his win monumental, it exceeded what I believed. Look, I knew he was going to win. I did not believe that it was going to be such a massive blowout. Right. And here's something I want to touch upon. That candidate and his perceived team is now on all of these, social media platforms saying Jack should extend an olive branch and welcome all of them in. Look, he needs those votes. There is no doubt about it. If he is going to win in November, he needs those votes. But how dare they? They ran a filthy campaign that people saw right through. I think it's very difficult for the Jack campaign, who is focused on what? Fundraising and winning, because that's what has to happen between now and November. Because because New Jersey is an off-year gubernatorial election, this is getting national money. Oh yeah, that they want to prop Mikey Sherrill up. Who I believe, if you ask Mikey Sherrill why she wants to be governor, I don't know that she'd have a great answer today. I don't know that she could tell you the most basic premise that you have to ask any candidate for public office. You want to say, why are you running? Hey, why do you want to be a county commissioner? Why do you want to be a state senator? Why do you want to be the governor? I mean, look, I hear great things about her military service and that she's a great mother. That's wonderful. How does that qualify you to be the governor of the state of New Jersey?
And apparently she's not a native New Jerseyan. Is that right, that she's not a native New Jerseyan?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I mean, look, I'm focused on Jack. I'm focused on trying to help Jack win in every way possible. I'm focused on keeping my two commissioners in office. They're incumbents. They're running for
Right.
re-election.
Right.
And I'm focused as the county chairman in running up the numbers in Cumberland County to do our very best for Jack.
Right.
And what's funny is, I'll tell you a funny one. How dare the NJEA ever say that they are about education? How dare they? They spent over $40 million to win Cumberland County. Can you imagine you won one county and spent $40 million? They should be ashamed of themselves, because I have schools in my legislative district like Dennis Township that if they were to receive $1 million, it would cure their ills probably for 2 full years. But they say they're about education. How is wasting $40 million on an egomaniacal campaign that we knew was destined for failure? We knew it was destined for failure from day one. From day one, Dan.
That was the campaign of the president of the NJEA.
Yes.
Miller.
And by the way, a very interesting thing about him, he was the mayor of his town, which is full-time, and somehow he's the president of the NJEA, which is full-time. I don't know how you can have 2 full-time jobs and run statewide for office and be effective at any of those jobs.
And apparently he was paid a hell of a lot of money as president of the NJEA.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and then we're supposed to think he's a real man of the people. Give me a break. I mean, it's really sad.
Now, let's talk for a second about the budget, because we're coming up on budget time.
Sure.
And which should we be concerned about, Senator?
I mean, we should be concerned about what every New Jerseyan should be concerned about. And folks like Senator Steve Oroho, who's no longer in the Senate, Senator Declan O'Scanlan, who's my budget officer. I'm the ranking member on the Senate Budget and Appropriations Committee. We've been screaming from the rooftops. This is my 6th budget.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is my 6th budget now.
Mm-hmm.
We've been screaming about massive affordability issues in the state of New Jersey. That's what we should be looking at. I mean, and all of these increased energy costs that are coming, that we know are coming this summer. And you see another scheme from the Democrats to say, oh, we're going to give you $100. Well, that's really nice that you're giving us $100 of our own money when our energy costs are going up because of a really bad energy master plan, which I called the energy disaster plan when I was running for office in 2019, Dan. 2019, I called it the energy disaster plan. I mean, think about, I'll just talk about two energy production facilities that were taken offline. You had Oyster Creek and BL England taken offline. That's over 1,000 megawatts. We had nothing to replace it with. And what the Murphy administration was pursuing was offshore wind. So they gambled the house on offshore wind working. Well, look, thank God none of the turbines are standing. Thank God. But we spent a massive amount of time, energy, and by the way, ratepayer money on a silly pursuit that with nothing to show for it.
And imagine the effort that had to go into stopping the turbines. The effort and time and money that was spent on stopping the turbines off of our marvelous New Jersey shoreline, which is so important to our economy of our state.
For tourism, commercial fishing, recreational fishing, you know, and think about this. In Orsted's own submission, it said that those massive structures in the ocean were probably going to reduce tourism by 15%. I represent Cape May County. Tourism is the #1 commodity that we have. #1 in Cape May County. I don't know any business that can take a 15% shave and survive. I don't know any business that can do that. And let's be honest with ourselves. I never thought when I was growing up and seeing all of the wonderful commercials for Save the Whales that I was going to have to one day fight with Democrats so that they would not want to industrialize our ocean floor. I never ever thought that the industrialization of our oceans was going to be on the table for them. And yet we saw, and look, we're told that we're science deniers, that we have no clue what we're talking about. That, and you get spoken to like your children, by the way, when we're in Trenton by so-called experts. And then you ask them to explain the anomaly of whale deaths, dolphin deaths, porpoise deaths, empty scallop shells that they call clappers, that they had never seen the amount of them in all of the years that watermen have been on the water. Yet they tell us we're not really exactly sure what it is, but we know it has nothing to do with the sonar mapping of the ocean floor. And oh, by the way, it's all global warming. That's all it is. And you say, well, it all hit all of a sudden? It doesn't make any sense. So I said a lot. I apologize.
No. I want you to, because these are very important issues, and it's very important that it be explained. And I know it must be frustrating to be in the minority there and to try to get your message across when you have a government in the majority that really they push things through. They don't even give you a chance to read the legislation, whatever.
And that happens quite a bit, especially when it comes to the budget. I mean, look, we have a $58 billion budget that, pursuant to our Constitution, has to be passed by July 1. Has to.
Right.
And guess what? I don't have a copy of the budget yet. I don't know that any of the Democrats have it either, a full copy of the budget. But wouldn't it be nice if we had, let's see here, 2 weeks to be able to, go through the budget? That'd be nice to me, to go through, hundreds of pages of documents that are attached to it. To me, that's the least that we could do. And for those of us who sit on the Senate Budget and Appropriations Committee, my hat goes off to them on both sides, because it's really tedious meetings that we sit through for a very long time of budget season. But I think we deserve to have a number of days to read and digest. And it sort of becomes very similar to, your friend Nancy Pelosi, who said we have to pass it to find out what's in it, and to me, obviously, I can't do that. So I, as a Republican, I haven't voted for a single budget, and people think I'm being partisan. But when you really do that deep dive, you realize how much poor Christmas tree spending there is in our state budget that, you know what, if we were able to shave some of that out of there, it would go into our taxpayers' pockets.
And South Jersey has traditionally been the stepchild, if you will. Let me give you an example, and I want to touch it for a moment upon New Jersey Transit. And anyone who's had any dealings with New Jersey Transit. And here in South Jersey, we barely have New Jersey Transit, okay? And the New Jersey Transit that we have is bad. But New Jersey Transit up and down the state is bad. It has lost enormous amounts of money have been spent on it. It doesn't seem to get any better. I don't know why. Let me give you an example. I like to go into New York to see the Broadway shows. Anybody who follows my blog or follows me on Facebook knows I'm a big fan of Broadway. Now, in order for my wife and I to get into New York, unlike in North Jersey, where you can simply go to the nearest train station, get in a train, and you go to New York. No, we can't do that. If we wanted to go to New York, we have to either go into Philadelphia and deal with the traffic and everything else in Philadelphia, to Penn Station. We have to take Patco line, and then SEPTA to get to, so that's two different trains to get to Penn Station, or we have to drive to Penn Station and pay a ton of money to park there. And then try to get the train from there. We're actually going away from New York when we go into Philadelphia to New York. Or the only other alternative is effective.
The bus.
The only other effective alternative is we have to drive up 295 to Hamilton, to Central Jersey, or Trenton, and get on the station there. Now, Trenton Station is a rather sketchy station. Okay,
I would recommend it.
right. Okay, so we go to Hamilton, where we have to pay to park, even on the weekends, when the surface parking lot is empty because commuters aren't there, but they won't let you into the surface parking lot. You have to go into the parking deck, and pay to park and get on the train there, and then come back. Then you got to go to your car, get back in your car, drive 295. There's no service effectively from South Jersey. And this kind of thing has been going on forever. Not to mention the fact that when you get to New York, the New Jersey Transit station is disgraceful. It's disgusting. It's awful at Penn Station. The New Jersey Transit part of Penn Station. Oh, and this is if New Jersey Transit gets you there. We actually were on a train once that broke down. They said, "Oh, another train is coming." We had to get out of the train. I don't know if you've ever, when you get out of the train and there's not a train platform there. You're on the bedrock or whatever they call it. The bed tracks the tracks in the middle of, there's no.
Yeah, it's like gravel, if I remember correctly.
Gravel,
right?
yes.
Yeah, it's gravel. Yeah.
And people had to actually help lift us up onto the other train. All right. New Jersey Transit, Senator.
So look, I've often referred to New Jersey Transit as North Jersey Transit, and that they don't really have a presence in South Jersey. And I think this is what happens. Like when I was a young kid, you saw buses from private companies that ran regularly.
Yes.
And this is what happens when you get government intervening in what private industry is already doing.
Right.
And the one thing I will say, look, I have met with the new president of New Jersey Transit, and he only has a few more months left, President Kaluri. He actually really gets it. I wish he had been there for my entire tenure so far, because I think he really understands the needs of South Jersey. I mean, think about this. I'll give you an example. The casino industry is not that far from my legislative district into Senator Palestina's district.
Right, of course, right.
We have a number of potential workers from Vineland, where we have a bus depot, by the way, to go to Atlantic City.
Right.
But it takes over 2 hours for those buses because of the amount of stops to get to Atlantic City. Oh, and by the way, they don't coincide with the shifts that occur in Atlantic City. So nobody kind of spoke to anybody before they decided to run these buses to see whether they actually for potential employees.
Right.
And when you talk to what I call the captains of industry, the CEOs of the casinos, they desperately need employees. And this is something that, of course, most folks don't understand. You could have someone that starts out, cleaning rooms at one of the casino hotels.
Right.
That job comes with fantastic union benefits for that individual and their family, obviously, for their children. And to me, that's a great place to start a career in the casino industry. And I've spoken to individuals, one of my friends, Joe Gingoli from Hard Rock Casino, he's told me we have multiple people that's where they got their start. This isn't some dead-end job. When they've shown initiative and they show up on time regularly, well, guess what? There's a number of vacancies in Atlantic City right now. And I don't think we should even touch upon how disastrous Atlantic City is right now because of the utter failed leadership that they've had there for a number of years. But, I will say this, Cape May County is number 2 for tourism tax dollars generated. Atlantic County is number 1. But if you took out the gambling aspect, Cape May County is number 1. But look, they have gaming, obviously, in Atlantic City. We need people. If we're going to thrive in South Jersey, we need people going to Atlantic City. And I don't understand how Atlantic City has marketed itself over the years. They have a wonderful beach. They should have made themselves a family resort. They have a wonderful restaurant scene, both inside and outside of the casinos. That's a place that I love to go eat.
Right.
They have marketed themselves so terribly for the last quarter century. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. They need an overhaul. And if Atlantic City fails, South Jersey fails. So
you want to talk about marketing. You want to talk about marketing of a shore resort. Okay, who's better at that than our friend Curtis Special?
Nobody.
Who's better at it? Nobody, right?
Nobody. So he and I will say
Look at what he's
Eustace,
done in Cape May.
so he and Eustace Mita, I would say, of the Cape May County, but particularly Curtis, and they're both dear friends of mine, both Curtis and Eustace. They created, I mean, they invented the shoulder season. They invented it.
Right.
It used to be a summer resort, obviously, and
Right.
then people would leave after Labor Day, maybe come down a couple more weekends, and that's all she wrote. Well, the shoulder season then went from Mother's Day to closer to Thanksgiving. Then it went from Easter to Thanksgiving. Then it went from even earlier to Christmas. I don't know what the statistic was last year for Christmas of 24, but Christmas of 23, the Christmas parade had more people in the city of Cape May than the 4th of July parade did.
I took my kids and my grandkids to Cape May for Christmas. We stayed over Cape May for Christmas to see the lights. We took the trolley tour. It was
It's magical.
marvelous.
It's
Marvelous.
magical. It really is. It's magical.
Yes. A beautiful, beautiful. The kids loved it. My grandkids loved it. My grown kids loved it. It was wonderful, wonderful family memories, folks. I commend it to you. We stayed at, we couldn't stay at the Congress Hall because the rooms were not big. We had so many kids and my kids, but I was able to stay at one of Curtis's other properties.
The Virginia Hotel?
No, it was the Sandpiper. The Sandpiper.
Okay.
Yeah. And we had efficiency units. It was very nice. Plenty of room. When you have little kids,
Sure.
And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And they've done a fabulous job of marketing themselves. Also, of course, Ocean City has always done a fantastic job of marketing itself in Ocean City, New Jersey. So it can be done.
So I want to speak about this
done by private industry. Go ahead, Senator.
Yeah, no, so here's one thing I will tell you. So Diane Wieland is the director of tourism for Cape May County. She is someone that you should talk to. She lives and breathes tourism for Cape May County every day of her life. This is a little known fact, and I'm so proud of my legislative district. Cape May County was the first county in the United States to have an office in a foreign nation.
Wow.
And this may explain something about the Wildwoods. And look, my first job in my life was as a member of the Wildwood Beach Patrol starting in 1990, which shows I'm not that young anymore. But Cape May County had an office of tourism in Canada. And that might explain why so many French Canadians, vacation in the Wildwoods. But they were the first to do it in the 70s. And you see, it's been extremely successful, and they were visionaries. They understood how important tourism was, which this is a great time to dovetail into, being an effective legislator, Dan. Myself and Senator Sarlo in the Senate were able to introduce the Boardwalk Preservation Bill, which was $100 million funding bill for our boardwalks. And I'm very proud to say that Cape May County last year was able to get $34.1 million out of that $100 million boardwalk preservation bill. And I think it did wonders for our tourism industry.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And that's the kind of thing you need to be fighting for, so that government and private industry can work together in effective partnerships to do what needs to be done.
Absolutely. I mean, you think of all of those shops that are on our boardwalks, throughout, whether it's Monmouth County, Ocean County, Cape May County, Atlantic County, you name it, they have to make their money for the year during the summer season, during the tourism season. If you don't have a boardwalk in front of them or a section is closed, what happens to their business? They're devastated. So again, that is that partnership between the government and private industry, so that private industry can thrive, not just squeak by and survive. I will tell you a funny story about this. I mean, everybody knows from my social media, and I'm not shy about it. I love pizza. It's never a bad day to eat pizza. New Jersey, I think, has some of the greatest food in the United States of America.
Absolutely.
My friends that have moved away have told me we miss the Italian food, we miss pizza, we miss bagels, we miss pork roll. They don't know what it is other places, and it is pork roll. I want to be very clear on that. But one of my favorite pizza places in Wildwood is called Sam's Pizza Palace. And a couple of years prior in the budget, there was $4 million for Wildwood's Boardwalk. And I was dressed casually, Dan. This is one of those funny stories that being an elected official. And a gentleman was seated 2 seats away from me. And he says, I have to ask you something. Are you Senator Testa? Because I was in a pair of khakis and a polo shirt. And I said, yeah, I am. And I wasn't sure whether he was going to be happy with me or not. You never know these days. And he says, I got to tell you, you're doing a great job. I said, thank you so much. I appreciate it. He goes, I've seen you post about Sam's Pizza Palace today, really, in the past. This really is one of your favorite places. I said, it absolutely is. He goes, I got to tell you, you must have some juice that you were able to get the new portion of the boardwalk put right in front of your favorite pizzeria. And I told him, I said, sir, I don't have that level of juice at all. I said, listen, there was money in the budget for Wildwood's Boardwalk, but I don't get to pick that. Trust me on that. And it's as if he didn't really believe me, Dan. Which was kind of funny. It was one of those interactions with the public.
I saw you. And by the way, if you go to the senator's Facebook page, you will see that he spotlights these favorite eating places. They're not just in South Jersey. I mean, some of them are in North Jersey, some of them are in Central Jersey, in his travels throughout the state, because he's getting quite a reputation throughout the state. Okay. And you'll see, and he'll give you these tips on where to go for pizza, for hoagie, for cheesesteak, whatever it may be. Throughout pastries, ice cream. He's a big ice cream fan.
I am a big ice cream.
How he keeps his figure. I don't know what the secret is. We could do a separate program on that. But amazing and mouth-watering pictures accompany it as well. But I saw you were recently on the Wildwood Boardwalk for the opening of. I didn't even know they had this, a tram car shop.
Yeah, you saw that. Okay, great. Yeah, it's a great family, a great story that they have. A tram car shop. It's about the memorabilia, obviously, of the Wildwood Boardwalk. And if you've ever been to the boardwalk in Wildwood, you know the lovely sound. And to me, it makes me feel like summer has started, because when I hear it say, "Watch the tram car, please," and I hear that, it makes me feel like I'm home and that that summer has begun.
Right, and they don't just have tram car memorabilia and souvenirs, but souvenir the whole Wildwood and Jersey Shore thing, right?
Yes, oh, absolutely. But I mean, the tram car is featured for sure. I mean,
Yeah,
it's on certain reusable bags. But I mean, if you think about the history of just the Wildwood Boardwalk, and look, Wildwood Boardwalk, I get excited when I talk about the boardwalk because I happen to love it. I mean, the arcades that are there, all of my childhood comes back when I'm on the boardwalk in Ocean City or in Wildwood. But Wildwood, because I actually worked there,
right.
is a little bit more unique and more special to me. But you think about places like Douglas Chocolates, right? There's a place, and I've featured it before. And right down the ramp from Douglas is Laura's Fudge, those are two of my favorite places, and they're right near each other. And Douglas has been there over 100 years in the same family.
Amazing.
I mean, you think about the history, and that's what I think about. I'm like, wow, this boardwalk has been here that long. People have been coming into this shop to buy all of the great candies and confections that they have. I can't walk by either of those places without buying a lot, because they have this buy 2 pounds, get it 3 pounds free. So to me, you have to buy 2 pounds, so you get a third free. So I always come home with at least 3 pounds of fudge every time I'm there.
Well, it's easy to understand, but like I said, we're going to do a separate program on how he manages to, how he's not like 300 pounds already. Because if you look at some of the stuff he theoretically eats, okay, I don't know how you do it, but that's a whole.
There's nothing that I theoretically eat. I eat everything that I take a picture of. Trust me on that. I don't always necessarily finish everything I take a picture of, but I absolutely eat what I take pictures of.
You definitely, you're speaking from, you actually taste all these things and enjoy them.
100%. There isn't one thing I've ever posted that I haven't probably eaten at least 3/4 of it. I will say that.
Okay, okay. Well, everybody go in there and watch some of these things, and you will get some good tips on where to go and what kinds of foods to enjoy. Senator, this has been a wonderful session. We're coming up with like 54 minutes. I thank you so much for the time that you've made tonight. And this is a public official, by the way, who's incredibly, incredibly accessible. I don't know of anybody else who's more accessible in the state of New Jersey, certainly, than Senator Mike Testa, who is. I don't know how you do it. I don't know. I don't know how you juggle all these things. To be honest with you,
You can't stop. I mean, Dan, I'll say this. Look, I take this job extremely seriously. And I know sometimes people say, oh, all you do is eat food and drink lattes and go to breweries. And that's absolutely not true. But I mean, I do enjoy those things. But I think that the people of New Jersey deserve to have access to us. I mean, every now and again, you got to put limitations on it because, sometimes on a Sunday I get a message and I'll say, hey, please call the office. I'd appreciate if you could call the office on Monday. And then all of a sudden they repeat things and they come back at you 2 or 3 more times. You have to say, excuse me, this is Sunday. I'm spending time with my family. I'm actually in the we just got out of the car. I'm with my children. Please call the office on Monday. But for the most part, we're public officials. We have to be accessible to the public, especially our constituents, the people that we serve in our legislative district.
right?
We have to be accessible and I think that really developed, Dan. It was sort of trial by fire during COVID when people were trying to, get their unemployment benefits, which was an absolute debacle with the Department of Labor. So that was really when all of that accessibility started because people didn't know where to go or who to turn to.
Well, we love the job you're doing. We think you have an exciting future. We haven't talked about what may or may not be next. We don't want to get too much ahead of ourselves because we've got an election to win in November, and that is electing Jack Cirucci and a Republican state assembly and state senate.
Well, Senate's not up this year, so we're good. So, I'm relaxing this year for the first time. Yeah. Okay. But the entire General Assembly is up, all 80 seats.
Yeah, it's a little weird because I thought since the governor, which is sort of like the president, is running, that the 2 houses would be up just like they are when the president runs. But in New Jersey, it's a little different, huh?
And it shuffles because in 21 it was that way. In 2021, because the Senate is on a 10-year cycle of 4-4-2, whereas the Assembly is on a 2-year cycle every time. So
the senators are 4 years, 4 years, 2 years.
Correct.
That's very, very I don't know of any other state where they have that. That's very unusual.
Well, because we redraw the maps every 10 years. So I guess they had to make that coincide with the map redraw.
Well, that's a whole nother thing, redistricting.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay. We've spent enough time. I've taken enough of your time. I'm tremendously grateful. This was on Facebook Live. It's going to be at the top of my Facebook page. It'll be there for quite a while. It's on LinkedIn. It's on my YouTube channel, and it will be featured at dancerucci.com right after we're finished here, and it'll be there for a while. So tons and tons of people are going to be able to see it. Senator, thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. I'm really grateful for this opportunity, and I think you've been doing a fantastic job for a number of years, and I've heard nothing but great things about you from even before I met you from Joe Condo. So you're aces in my book.
Well, I don't want to get in any trouble with Joe Condo, that's for sure.
Definitely not.
Our dear friend Joe Condo.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Have a great evening. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye now.